Yeah, no doubt.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to another amazing Compost Academy Sustainable Design Masterclass webinar. We've got a very special session today. We are joined by Chad Dutai and Domingo Medina, along with Keisha and Casey Ernst and Brian Vag, who are going to share their stories with their experience as professional composters. So this is going to be a really exciting session today to peek behind the veil and see that journey from student to professional. So I'm really excited to bring these guys on because getting to know them over the last year and a half for me has been great, but also seeing the journey that Keisha and Casey and Brian have had with Chad and Domingo, and also knowing the journey that Keisha and Casey and Brian have had from student to professional. This is a very great perspective to see what that looks like from when you come to someone who's just interested about soil, want to get into it, to where you can go as a professional and what it looks like and what are some of the struggles like. So this is going to be a very fun session today. So first of all, we're going to go with Keisha first, then we're going to go with Chad. I'm going to talk a little bit about Compost Academy, and then Domingo is going to go next, and then we are going to hop into Q&A. So why don't we get started? Oh, and first, yeah, we have the chat box down below. We are recording this webinar, and everyone's going to get an email after the fact. And yeah, excited to start. And feel free to type in the chat box where you're coming from, because it's always good to see where everybody's coming from. All right, Keisha, why don't you take it away?
I think you guys, I was late to the understanding that I should be presenting today. I forgot I was a professional composter. So let me get up my one slide. Casey convinced me to do one slide. Is it's good for promotions. Let's see, do you guys see it? Or is it in
Yep.
full screen?
Oh, well, it's in presenter mode right
Presenter
now.
mode. Hold on, let me do a little bit of there we go. All right, you guys. So I'm Keisha Ernst. I wear a whole lot of hats. That's why I kind of forgot about the composting side of things when we were talking today. I'm a teacher at the Compost Academy. If you decide to join us, you've got about 4 or 5 weeks with me, depending on how our schedule shakes out. And if you really apply yourself to what you do at Compost Academy and you continue the work, we might work together for years. I'm one of those people that loves community. I love meeting new people. I love collaborating on projects. And so the folks that you're going to hear about today, they've been wrapped up in our web for quite some time, and I'm guessing they're probably not going to leave anytime soon. Um, yeah, secondly, I'm a consultant. I've got 3 different businesses here that we're always balancing. Our consulting company is called Soil Matters, and we work with Brian Vog, who you saw earlier. We've been working together for since the very beginning, 6 years, I would say. And there was a point where it was 2 of our businesses working side by side, and we decided, you know what, it's going to be easier just to form into one. So the name Soil Matters is a little bit new. It's only been around for about 3 years. But we did that so we could start working on larger scale agriculture projects, working on, giant trials, things of this nature. And then the third job, the one I forgot about, that's catalyst bioamendments. It's a mouthful. What is a bioamendment? It is compost that is made to have all the different microorganisms that we want to see for our soil restoration work. So bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and nematodes. We were taught by Dr. Elaine Ingham. And so, yeah, our compost is produced to meet her minimums. Now, I would say that Catalyst Biominus is probably the reason that anyone is here listening to us at all. I don't think we've gathered much fame for our consulting. It's all about the compost. And I don't want to say that we were the first. A lot of people say that we started this, but we definitely didn't. There was lots of people all over the world making compost at scale that had these organisms in it. I do believe our claim to fame is that at some point I started sharing everything we do really openly. So, since the beginning of our business, I've just been telling everyone about what we're doing. And so that makes us a little bit more known. Elaine Ingham was our mentor. Like I said, we studied at Environment Celebrations Institute. That's where we began our journey in the soil food web reality. We found Elaine incredibly inspiring. We got to finally meet her in person, start working on our microscopes together. And at that moment, her school exploded and dissolved, and we were that class that was left hanging. So Catalyst Bioamendments was started before we were even technically should have been consulting, right? So it kind of worked out for us really well because at the time, if you wanted to be a soil food web consultant or you wanted to work with soil life of any kind in California, it was really hard to find an inoculation. We met Brian Vaugh. He told us it was his number one issue. He was already a consultant. He was working with many different growers all over the US and mainly in California, and he just couldn't source the compost that he needed. Elaine was our private mentor. We got to have her one-on-one because as that business dissolved, she stuck around, we stuck around, and there weren't any other teachers. So I felt probably 10 foot tall and bulletproof. I thought at that time, like, I've got Elaine Ingham on my team. Uh, got these great coworkers. We're going to make this happen. It's going to be so easy. And if you talk to Elaine, she'll tell you making compost with a compost turner is so much easier than making compost by hand. And I think that's all I heard. That's probably all she said. It's all I heard. So we just jumped in, head first, boom, let's go. And we started a compost lot. It was mainly passion and Elaine that gave us the power to think that we could actually be in this industry. Um, our first windrow we built was incredible. It was better than our hand-turned piles. Elaine was right. Making compost at scale isn't hard. What she failed to mention, or maybe didn't know, was that when you're creating a compost business, there's a lot more than just making high quality compost. And I could rattle on for days and weeks and months about all of those questions that came up along the way, um, all the things that happened that there weren't answers for. But I have to say, and I'm still very grateful for Elaine, I thought she'd have the answer to every question, that I would just come to her and she would just say, do this, and that's what I would do. But she was better than that. She didn't have the answers. She was honest with me when she didn't have the answers. And she would just remind me, Keisha, I gave you the tools to figure this stuff out on your own. And she was right. So for 6 years, we've been working at Catalyst Bioamendments. Our goal has been to make a product that is consistent, that functions in the way that we want it to for application for folks that are doing regenerative efforts with soil. And at this point, yeah, we've done that. And I think along the way, we didn't necessarily want to start a school. It was always there. Folks, we've always mentored people unofficially. We've always held workshops and live. Maybe some of you that are here today have hung out with us. A lot of folks, that's where they meet us first, is at an in-person workshop. But I never really wanted to start a school and talk about large scale because I didn't really have it figured out yet as a business. Although our compost has been good the entire time, the business side of it has been slow. And so we would often have people call and say, hey, I want to be just like you guys. I want to start something like Catalyst Bioamendments. And I was always pretty quick to be honest about where we sat with our issues, the trials and tribulations with trying to start a compost company in an industry where typically compost is, $15 to $150 per yard. The overhead on making the compost we make is quite high. And I was just being honest with people. It wasn't a great business model as far as I could see. Now, the tide's been rising for years. We see it every year. It gets a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. And I would say this year is the very first year that I'm not going, hey, should I still be in business? Should I stop now? Like, should I just give up? Because this year is the very first year that Catalyst is actually making money. It's taking care of itself on its own. Before, we always had to use our consulting business to hold our compost up. And that's common for a lot of people coming in. It's a dream, it's a passion, and it's not fully worked out where the funding is going to come from. Um, like, why am I bragging about my successful business here online? Well, it's relevant because I'm sure a lot of you are thinking about starting a compost business. And 3 years ago, I would have said, ugh, I don't know if you're going to be able to find clients. No one really knows about this. But now there's thousands of people out in the world that are doing this work. They're sharing what they're seeing, and folks are becoming very aware of what's going on. And there is a drive. People want to buy bioamendments. I was reading somebody else's page, and they were using the word bioamendment like it's a word. And I thought, oh, cool. Now people want bioamendments. It's a sign. It's time for everyone to start a compost business now. And a lot of folks have asked us, like, aren't you nervous that you're going to teach all these people how to do what you do, and then you're not going to have a business anymore? Um, I don't think so. That's not been my experience so far. Investing in other people to learn how to make compost has been the great joy of my life. I'm going to wrap this up right now because I'm so excited to present to you Chad and Domingo. So, just a little bit of background on our relationship with both of them. Chad, we've known for probably, gosh, 10 plus years. We've been doing soil restoration work together. Um, since none of us knew what we were talking about, we were just so green. We were babies at the time. And he's just getting started with his business, and it's a very different story than what Domingo's doing. So really excited for you to hear from him. Domingo, totally different. He's been in the business forever. He's as far as composting goes, he is our elder in every way. He teaches us more about composting and the large scale industry at large than probably we teach him. And it's one of my favorite things about Compost Academy is we have students, but you can hardly call them students because it is this back and forth between all of us. We all have something to share, and we are actively sharing all the time. So these guys are my friends now. They're my colleagues, they're students, they're teachers. And I am just so excited for you to hear what they have to say. Thank you for listening to me. You can find me at Catalyst Bioamendments or, literally any of our emails or our Instagrams come my way. So thank you very much. And
Thank you.
I'm going to stop my share.
Thank you for the wonderful words, Keisha.
Thank you.
Now, Chad, I'll pull the presentation up in the background and you can just let me know, like, hey, next slide, next slide.
Sounds good.
All right, cool. Da-da. Oh, behind the scenes drama.
We have been waiting for this chat for some time now.
That's
I've
gonna be fun.
heard that people wanted to hear me talk, and I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
huh. Normally people are like, this guy, can you shut him
Listen, we have your whole marketing in our brain.
It wasn't just anyone, Chad. It was Domingo. Domingo said Chad must speak, and we were all like, "Ooh,
Ooh,
uh,
I take that as,
uh-oh."
hey, you just gave me goosebumps. You got me all nervous
I
now.
feel a
Yeah.
No
presentation coming.
nerves. You're gonna flow right into this, Chad.
All right. Can everybody
You guys
see?
are getting
Can
ready,
everybody
get
see it all
ready to be
right?
students. We're going to do
Yeah.
this to you later.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Just get ready.
You're ready. All right. Good to go. Whenever you're ready, Chad.
All right. Welcome everybody. I'm Chad Dutai from Inoculum Biosolutions Limited here in little tiny Nova Scotia, Canada. I started Inoculum after I was crazy enough to buy a school bus. Actually, next slide. Oops. Yeah, so here I am. The reason why I started Inoculum is I bought a school bus when I went out to visit my dear friends Keisha and Casey after restrictions got lifted. And I went down. They've been after me for a little while to be like, hey, soil's your thing. It's kind of been your thing for a while. Come check out what we're doing. And then I kind of kicked dirt a little bit. And I said, okay, I'll come out. Um, Fell in love with what they're doing and seeing what they're doing and holding the type of compost that they were making in my hand for the first time. I was like, "Whew, okay, this is different. This is special. My friends aren't just crazy." Uh, so I bought a school bus, which their employee Danny had and didn't want anymore. And Keisha was like, let's make it a tour. And they're like, okay. And we did 9 workshops from California to New Brunswick, Canada. And that was my crash course into the soil food web and nutrient cycling and thermophilic composting. When I got back, I started Inoculum. Um, that's how this madhouse gets started. I credit my dad to a lot of the ways that I can pay attention to detail. Um, I've been in the woods my whole life, and I think without those tools, I don't think I would care as much about this kind of soil. And growing up in rural Nova Scotia, my first job was working in a blueberry field. If anybody from these northern tundra places have in rural areas, children have done that during the 90s. Ecuador, when I met Keisha and Casey on a reforestation project, like almost 15 years ago. That is a key player in this, the microbus tour. And, we're just kind of big dreams, small family business right now. Next slide. Inoculum today, there's a huge bowfly. Get away from me. Okay, sorry. What we actually do right now is I'm doing bulk compost. And we'll get the next slide is kind of where they're going. We do a bagged product of a 10-liter bag. I do some compost consulting a little bit. I never really got into, my story is a little bit opposite of Keisha and Casey's. They went into the business to be consultants. I did not. I just want to make compost, and those kind of roles are reversed. And I do some workshops and mostly huge demos to sell the product at farmers markets and at a couple of my current retailers. Just showing people the microbes and talking about the soil food web, talk about the nutri-cycling and showing people that there are actually living organisms in this. You're not just like, oh, hey, like here's some really special soil and, pull the wool over people's eyes and in the soil blend world, especially. I've been putting a lot of those blends under the microscope since I've owned microscopes now, and it's minimal. So my next steps are to scale up. I've been doing this with my back. I make 1 cubic meter piles at a time. So it's 2 cubic meters of input. 2 years ago, I made 30 cubic meters. As you can see in this photo, I do have a space boot on because I tore my Achilles tendon last year. And I still went out and did my composting thing. Yeah. We're in pitch competitions. We're working on doing university trials and finding the funding for that. Between being able to make the claims that you want to make on your packaging, it's a whole, I could probably talk for an hour just on government regulations and the red tape that they put you through when you're starting this type of thing. So language is very important. And we're on the way to turning my mother's family farm into our large scale facility. Still very far away from that, but it's baby steps. Next slide, please. Okay, I get told this a lot that I have a lot of irons in the fire. These are kind of the 3 biggest current ones right now. I'll discuss a little bit of more of the dream side of things here, but I wouldn't have a business today if I didn't have Barnyard Organics. We met them in our last workshop in New Brunswick. They are the largest granary in the Maritimes. They do about 250 acres of organic grain for chicken and hog stock. So what they are doing, they are making compost extract and they're putting in their no-till seed drill. They have like a 180 gallon tank, which is normally made for liquid fertilizer. And they inoculate each seed before it goes into the ground. Another special thing about Barnyard Organics is they are a part of the carbon credit pilot program. So in another 3 years, we're going to have data using my biology of how biology can sequester carbon deeper into our soils. It's already been proven, but science likes to repeat science, which is great. the next client here of mine is Victoria Park, which is a very large, famous provincial park here in Canada, in Truro. We're working towards, they just bought their second yard. They're doing hurricane relief. So they're putting a shovelful in every hole with their native soils. They're doing a very large planting of native species here for the Appalachian Acadian forests. And next year, we're working towards doing root zone injections and foliar spraying. And year 3, we're hoping to do large scale custom composting right on site. So I can make them 3 years worth of compost, and then they can use it up, and then I'll go back when they need more. This is potentially my gateway to all provincial and national parks eventually. And provincial, agricultural, and cultural is like my next little branch here of the social change, which is something that was just announced yesterday. So that's super cool that the timing worked out on this. This is from base to biomass, which is 2 different composting programs that Music Festival is hired me to do. The first avenue of waste management is all the food vendor waste. Now, this music festival is in about a 200-acre lot in the middle of nowhere. They truck off a lot of waste. So I will be coming up with the metrics of how much waste can be diverted. And we're going to turn it into the best quality compost that we can. And then start inoculating their forest. And they want to start a food forest and permaculture gardens, which also I have some experience in. So we're going to be pushing that. And then the second project that they are switching over to is composting humanoid toilets. It's a huge undertaking. I don't think there's anybody who's ever done this in Canada before. So we're going to be coming up with a model of how to scale up this type of production. It's about 3,000 people that come every year. Yeah, so this year is the pilot year. I'm going to be coming up with these matrix about and testing for human pathogens and heavy metals. Also, everything else that people will be ingesting over the weekend, and how to take care of that properly in the upcoming years. There's a lot of red tape to go through this project, but they're excited about it, and I'm excited about it, and we'll just make it happen. Next slide, please. The big vision. Number 1 is my compost facility to eventually pay my household bills, which is not happening right yet. I still work full time. As you can see, I am dirty. I just got off work. I work in excavation, and I'm a vac truck operator. So I drive a very large shop vac on a truck. And we take care of finding electrical lines and things like that. Hello, I just got a text message. The university trials, we're working towards going after grape and forage. So what that means, in 3 years, I'm hoping to have enough funding to do full farm trials. Right now, we are just applied for $15,000. So I can do full DNA analysis on the compost, so I can tell people what organisms I am growing, why they are beneficial. Then the second year, we would do a smaller trial on forage to prove, say, protein levels. And then the third year, we would go for vineyards and do some on farm trials on our local vineyards here in Nova Scotia. The Eco Village and Educational Hub, it's kind of been like a dream of mine to kind of take what I've learned in Ecuador and kind of apply it here in Nova Scotia and tap into some ecotourism vibe dollars, and do education and have people come, have people host their own space. And I got a AI generated vision in the next slide that I'll kind of show. And then the biggest thing for me right now is microbes on Mars. It sounds like crazy stuff, but all this terraforming language is out there right now, and like, well, how would you do it? Well, you kind of have to. You can't grow food without soil microbes, so I applied for a grant with NATO, which is crazy. That is coming up with some patents, hopefully, that I can send my compost and have space shuttle composting, a unit that's pallet ready, that the astronauts can deal with all their waste, and we can terraform the moon or Mars with their waste products over exponential amount of time that I can probably not fathom. So yeah. Next slide. Okay, the team behind us. Yeah, here we are. This is me, the founder, of course. You've already met me. Honey, who is my the mother of my children. She is my great organizer because I am a mess. And as you can probably get the idea that I have a lot of different ideas. So she needs to help me organize those and my note taking, because I'm a chicken scratch kind of guy. And of course the Compost Academy. You know, my mentors, my best friends. If I haven't had that bus tour and the time away in Costa Rica, really opening up my eyes to the full potential of what this can do. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today without them. So they're always a mention. Next slide, please. Okay, so the Compost Academy. What it has done for me is giving me a new train of thought. So in their classes, through the online school, this is my lot design. I don't have it yet, but it's the idea. So I needed to do it, and it was kind of always something on the back burner, but then they had a whole class on it, and I was like, oh, well, now I have to do it. That's kind of the idea of like school sometimes. Like you might have these great ideas, but you don't have a reason to do it. And the Compost Academy was that. Like I was kind of pushing it aside, and okay, well, now I'll make my lot design. That's it in a nutshell. The blue places are fish ponds that I'll use for irrigation and making the compost and tipping areas. It's all super exciting stuff. The next one is the community. This is the AI generated image, but I've been wanting to start, lack of a better terms, a dirt church. And so we're going for a burnt church timber frame. I've been speaking with some timber frame makers, and he's super excited about the project. Gave me a crazy great price because he wants to build a portfolio. And my brother's an engineer, so we have him drawing up some drawings, and we're gonna go for it. Gonna cut some beautiful pine up and start building something similar to this. Indoor outdoor greenhouse space that will be a gathering and venue lot, and a place to host educational events and bands and things like that. And the last thing here is some testing. So when I'm rethinking about this train of thought, something that I wouldn't have thought of without the Compost Academy is, okay, I'm doing this really micro science micro lot style. What is it doing to the native soil that I did all this composting on? So this is testing that I sent off to my independent tester, Olivia from PEI as well. And she did this, and the land underneath is now biocomplete. I met all the mediums. I dug down about 6 inches into the ground. And yeah, so this lot isn't huge. I mean, it was like a 100 by 50 little spot, but my chickens probably had a huge factor in this. They like to scratch and spread the compost everywhere. And I kind of was like, it's rehabilitating my land. And yeah, it sure did. Next slide, please. Oh, I don't know how I was for time, but I'm all done. So if you want to chat sometime, this is all my contact information. My website, knockingonbiosolutions.net. Chad Ed, I know it's a bit weird, it's Chad Ed or Chad Ed. My middle name is Edward. I didn't realize this when I made the email. It's a bit different. Yeah, and feel free to reach out, and thanks for listening to me talk.
Great.
Awesome. Thanks, Chad. That was fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, we'll pop all your contact detail in the chat box below. We're gonna share Domingo Medina's incredible story, and I'm very excited. But really quick, we're gonna share with everybody a little bit about Compost Academy. So let me just pull that up in the background. Oops, I accidentally closed it. Oh no. Give me 1 second. In the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to type that in the Q&A there. Okay, here, now we're good. All right. Well, if you guys have already seen this, you're in for a treat because there's some really new stuff here. But I'm excited to be a part of the Compost Academy because we love seeing the transition people are going from someone who's excited about soil to either being a professional, transforming their farm, or making incredible compost. We're offering this training so anyone can have that green thumb. And so you can train yourself to make this incredible compost that you can look under a microscope and say, oh my gosh, I've did it. I've made this beautiful amount of soil life and I've trained myself to do it. So, a lot of us were inspired. We want to know, where do we go? What do we do with this amazing information? You see a case study, you hear about, Elaine Ingham's amazing stories, but you wonder about where I can go. And what we're doing with Compost Academy is really to show you how you go from a student to someone who's doing this professionally. Whether you're a farmer wanting to do it on your land, whether you want to be a really good soil consultant, or whether you want to be a composter. We're trying to show people different avenues from how they can do that. And because we started as students of Elaine Ingham who moved to becoming professionals, we know that journey ourselves. And so we want to share you guys practical lessons for how you do that and not just to be bogged down in theory. So this is a cool thing I want to share. These are a lot of case studies that we recently filmed down in Southern California. These are land restorations that Keisha and Casey did using extract, and this is just biological extract. These landscapes were completely burned down from recent fires just a few years ago, and yet by repeated applications of compost extract, biological extract, they were able to completely transform these landscapes. And seeing that the before and afters is remarkable because you see the nearby landscapes, they're still suffering from these fires. They have not bounced back. But because of this use of biology, these landscapes have been totally transformed, like years ahead in the succession, thanks to the understanding of biology and thanks to Keisha and Casey's use of their biological composts and extracts. And so there's some other areas, some of these valleys on the left, you have a post-burn landscape that was bouncing back after a few years, but with extract looks completely advanced on the successional scale. It looks amazing. On the right, you have the Ramirez Canyon project where They're just started to restore this area after a fire. And after a few years of extract, it looks, there is canopy forest. So using extract and knowing these systems, you can make so many incredible, some would say miraculous transitions because you understand how to use biology. And this is Brian Vag helping vineyard projects, turning it from a moonscape into a functional vineyard using extract, helping these farmers get amazing yields, helping almond orchards do the same, helping landscapers, helping, large scale landscapers like Tony Taruso, who works with Disney and who works with thousands of projects, use extract to increase their bottom line, reduce their water needs, reduce their fertilizer and chemical needs, just increase their bottom line and meet their goals using biology. And just a last little bit, this is a triangle project in Hollywood Hills. It was just a complete horrible, degraded hillside, but using extract, they were able to transform it. And so these are just some of the lessons we teach at Compost Academy. Whether your context is a farmer, whether your context is landscape restoration or a consultant, we want to show you how to effectively use compost and biology to make these incredible changes in the soil. So what's it all about? It's about camaraderie. We're making sure you're not doing this alone. You have a team that you're going to follow through. With their live program, it's 13 weeks and until you kind of feel confident and confident that you can restore soil, you can make really good compost, then you could create biology. And the big part of this is actions and experience. It's you going out and designing your compost space, finding your input materials, making your compost, checking it, doing a trial if you have the space and time. And there's so many additional, oh yeah, extracts and teas. There's so many additional features that we add on to here. And a big part of that is challenges. We're going to challenge you to do these things. So it's not just you kind of creating your own impetus. There's challenges to help you get along there. And there's learning that works for you. Whether you want to do it at your own pace, great. We have self-paced lessons that if you don't have time to follow along, you can go at your pace. And another great thing we want to add is professional networks. We want to help you get clients. We want to help you improve your knowledge in compost and biology and microscopy. Whether you're a consultant, farmer, composter, we want to help you get to your goals. And this is a big community that we're creating to help each other create wins for the whole and for each other. So what we're going to be learning in Compost Academy, wide spectrum composting techniques, thermophilic composting, vermicomposting, static composting, biological extract and teas, also how to brew it, how to apply it, how to scale it, the techniques, microscopy for biology, the intro, and some bonus sessions, how to replace expensive and toxic inputs with biological compost, amazing case studies for farms, landscapes, growers, and composters, practical soil biology lessons, and composting on different scales, whether you're the small scale guy just starting in your backyard or whether you're a large scale composter, grower, farmer doing it across thousands of acres. So, here's a bit about the format. We have self-paced video lessons. It's over 28 lessons. We have the 13-week group coaching and training program. We have an online and in-person community, microscope library, with some bonus microscopy sessions. We have action challenges, and you all get first access and discount to future retreats and workshops. And we have really cool events coming up like large scale intensives and retreats that you get to be a part of. And of course, when you join, this live program, you get access to 4 things: self-paced online course, our live mentorship program, our soil circle, and our soil explorers group. And so all together, this is a huge value. Other programs, they charge $5,000, but because we're growing and we're starting, we're offering this now to you guys for $1,100. And you have this early bird offer available to July 15th. And you also have lifetime access to self-paced trainings and workshop recordings. You get $1,000 off the Future Compost Academy Online, which will be our master program. And we have so many bonuses. We're giving you guys discounts, future access, and this is all going to be available until we start our first week for 2025, our second round on July 15th. So if you're interested, just join us at compost.academy. All right. Well, we're going to turn it over to Domingo Medina, who's going to share his incredible story for his compost business. Thanks, Domingo.
Thank you. So can you see me? That's the question.
Oh, we can see it. We can't see your screen, but we're going to see if
How
I'm
can
going to
I
wait
do
till that
this?
pops up.
Geez. Does it go?
Not quite yet, but we'll
Not
get
yet.
there. I am confident.
Yeah. So for some reason I can't get out. I mean, I can see my screen, but I can't see the presentation. I mean, I can't see you guys.
That's all. Well, yeah, we can see you.
Huh.
Yeah,
Well,
so
but you can't
So
see my
usually I
screen.
can't see
not
people.
yet. So yeah,
I'm
once you
usually just staring at my presentation.
if you
Things,
re-click the share button below on
yeah.
Zoom, it should that pop-up screen should pop up again, which should enable you to kind of like reshare your screen.
Oh, show presentation. What about now?
Um, not
No?
yet. Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Why is this the case?
I
Okay.
I get it. Technology.
Okay, here we go. So I need to go from the sharing. Yeah, I made a mistake. I was sharing from okay, here we go. Now you can see me. What about
Hey, here we
now?
go. Yeah, it's a started
Got it.
sharing screen. Great. We're in
Okay,
your presenter mode.
good, good.
So wait, sorry, we're in your like the behind the scenes modes in PowerPoint. So if there we go. Now we're good.
There you go. Okay. Well, listen, thank you for this invitation. I'm the owner of Peels and Wheels Composting. I started this operation in 2014. And my experience and coming to this world of composting, it's a little bit different from what you heard from Keisha and the work she has been doing with Casey, even Brian's training, even Chad's training and Riley. But in my need to integrate and to learn from, all the shortcomings that I was learning through all my operation, the need for integration to learn from others has been an important part of the journey. Um, I started this by a lot of concerns in my own community. I was shifting jobs. I was leaving from working in Venezuela in rainforest environments, and I had to reinvent myself. And in one of those paths was to learn about what was happening in my community in regard to how we were dealing with organic waste. And at the time, some landfills were being closed down in Connecticut. We had a lot of issues around what was happening with the management of our waste. So many of our concerns when I started all this is to understand how we were dealing with our waste and why we're not composting more than what we needed to. So, uh, Connecticut, where I'm at, we have one of the highest incidence of pulmonary cancer and asthma in the state. It's not because of incineration, or I cannot make that link, but you already have sick populations. It's certainly incinerating your organics and your trash is not a good way. We have a lot of pollution in our soils due to the history of industrialization. And if you wanted to grow food, like the movement that's happening for a long time here in New Haven, we had to use raised beds because of the leads and arsenic and other heavy metals. There were not truly any composting service being done. So, that was a concern. And then, learning about what was happening with the degradation of soils everywhere, where, a lot of the challenges for farmers is how do you produce a yield and at the same time maintain the soil health of your farms to be able to produce. And we don't pay for that, those externalities. And and of course, the need to have and recover some of the nutrients value of our food in our system. So for me, was to find in composting a way to capture those organics that was being generated in my town and keeping it locally as much as possible, and to create, to do three things: to minimize environmental pollution from landfilling and incineration, to produce, enhance our soil through the provision of high quality composting and, produce also green jobs that's very much needed in our city. So that's how I started, inspired by those three mottos. That took me to a world of what's out there, and there were people talking about a hierarchy to reduce food waste and how to deal with it, from source reduction to, rescuing food, to doing backyard composting, to do decentralized community-based composting. What we wanted to avoid was the end of that inverted pyramid that was to do incineration and was to landfilling our food waste. And part of my training was started with being a Yukon Master Composting Program. That eventually took me to take courses at the USCC at the Compost Operation Training. And that connected me to the world of Soul Food Web through the training of Dr. Elaine. That was the first time I heard about Casey and Keisha. They were mentors at the time. And Brian was there in the background, but I didn't hear much about him at the time. I got involved with the Vermont Compost Operating, the 131 School of Composting by Jane McSweeney, which is one of the important books about community composting in terms of design. And that has been very influential in my design and in my operation. Then, the work of the Institute of Local Self-Reliance in supporting community composting nationwide. I'm one of 500 community composters that operates in urban and rural places around the state, which they have a community composting online certificate course. Then, I chased, basically, I received an email by somebody from the community composting world of a workshop that the academy at the time wasn't an academy yet, but Keisha, Casey, Brian, Chad were driving this crazy school bus, and they happened to stop in around Cleveland, and I said, I have so much questions for these guys, and I was able to go there and meet them, and I came up with more questions. So I ended up in Costa Rica last year to try to see if I can answer more questions, and I ended up with some resolve, but now a different journey with a road path of what I want to do after doing compost for a long, long time. And then there's another group, the Soil Wise group in LA, that are also doing some microbial assessment certificate, and they also inspire me because they, like the work of Casey, Keisha, and Brian. They're also going out there and trying to do soil restoration and soil health. So that's been, for me, is what I have learned from all these pieces and how to integrate them, because all of them bring to you some piece of information in your long learning curve of how to accomplish and be successful in your work. So, it started by thinking about how to deal with waste management and reducing our waste to, the best way to do composting. But compost alone is not a given that you're going to have high quality compost. You can still break down organic matter, but still the value and the quality might not be the same. And that's something that, certainly highlighted through the Compost Academy, is that, that not all composts are equal. To the concept of microfarming. And this is the first time I heard it down in Costa Rica. And this is a definition that I'm asking Keisha to come up with. It sounds great, but we need some technical definition because this won't be a buzzword. This will be a practical, an operational working frame to follow through. So I started with this compost of community composting, and again, it was about how do I improve the quality of life in my place by minimizing environmental pollution, enhancing the soils of a movement of growing food, of urban farms and gardens, and how to create jobs for myself and for others that I didn't have. We create the way it works. We have a system of bikes and trailers that goes around town, around the different routes, and we collect organic waste. We try to divert, a percentage of what goes to right now to an anaerobic digester, and we keep it local as much as possible. We make compost in some of our in different 2 or 3 of our facilities. We give compost back to people to be able to use in their own gardens and farms. But we also sell compost, and we donate a lot of compost. We produce so much compost that sometimes we don't have and be able to do as much. So through this process, we have been very good at breaking down organic matter, but what was lacking is how good was our compost for the potential application. So with the academy, I finally have been able to come out with a proposal that has put me into the field to start trials with using compost teas and able to understand whether my interventions really have a major impact in yields and also in minimizing pests and diseases in the crops that I'm following through working with 5 farms. This is just a map of all of our clients. We collect again all these by bikes and trailers, and my bikers live within the community where they operate. So they start in their house and they finish in their house, or they go to the hub and then return to their home. And has been a very successful in that regard. We have been able not only to pay for our operational costs, we pay for we have enough to be able to reinvest. But some of the constraints that we have is not having good land within the city. We rely on parking lots, or we rely on school sites. So it's very marginal in terms of how much we can grow. And others, may probably what they do is that they partnership with large scale operators. But that means that all that organic waste leaves the town, leaves the city, and most of the time doesn't come back. This is just an example of one of our sites. I'm working with sites between 3,500 to 4,000 square feet, where I manage a sizable amount of food scraps. Food scraps, as comparison to other system, it's a challenge. It's a challenge because of the volume that comes on a weekly basis that you have to process. Things that you deal with contaminants. You deal with a lot of salts. You have a lot of characteristic of this particular feedstock that needs to be managed to be able to break it down and not affect the biology and the quality of your compost. This is another system that I used to have that was based on boxes of 4x4x4, and I had 12 of them with a rotating system, and that worked fine for 10 years until that site got closed and I needed to move to another place. I helped a farm in a school on a different system, and that's where I'm at right now. And this is a little farm adjacent to the school of 3,500 square feet, where we use aerated static pile as a model. It allows you to manage a sizable amount of material in a very small space, and guaranteeing the flow of oxygen and the oxygen levels. Challenging for these type of systems, the moisture control. But that's where I'm at right now, and looking for more land to be able to grow. And this is just a description of that system in terms of carrying capacity and the amount of compost production it can make. And of course, part of our doing is, storing feedstocks and collecting wood chips and leaves, which are the natural type of feedstock of carbon-based material that you can find in your own town. Most of these are free because these are being collected by landscapers or people that are serving the city. So that's something that we have to stockpile during the fall time. And this is just an illustration of the ways we collect things with a system of bikes and trailers. And I have a bunch of people that just love biking and love to be outside and collecting food scraps around. As we have different ways of making compost. This is our way through the aerated static pile, where we have to blend the browns and greens, your carbon-based materials and your greens in a certain ratio and following certain recipe guidelines to make sure that things go through a thermophilic phase that are important to understand in the way you manage your organic waste. And you have to cure your storage area, and that's another management system by itself. whether you sift or not, that depends on your clients, and that's something that it's easy to be able to transport, but also it's also a way to market your product. And we all do this by hand, mostly with the, of course, now with the support of a small sister Trommel that does that. And we do a lot of outreach. We do a lot of education. We build systems in community gardens with the same principles, and we expand our efforts in our own community, and hoping that a young generation of kids can follow through and see in composting in their home as a just a second, like any other habit, like brushing your teeth. And we do this year round. Once we committed to do composting, we were not going to stop. And we found a ways through the challenge of the winter and the heat of the sun to keep going. And this is what it's all about, to giving back. People that have supported us, our community that was willing to pay for service, we can return compost back to them, but we also provide compost to a lot of farms in our place. And that's the joy, that you really go into closing the loop. And for us, it's about farming, it's about production of food in our place, and improving the quality of life in our place. So things that you're going to learn is, what are the requirements for good and rapid composting? And this is the triangle that I follow, which has been informed by a lot of all this training, but also got reinforced with the training that I got through the academy. But this is what I teach when I go about understanding what are the conditions for good composting. You understand about the ingredients of your feedstock, the properties, about your greens and browns, and how to classify them, and understand how they might behave within a composting system. Everybody have a different type of classification. This is the one that I learned from the Soil Food Web, that is based on whether things are of high nitrogen, green or brown, or slow nitrogen, as something that we have been adopting lately through our discussion. This is the beauty of this type of community, that we always revisioning what we learn through discussion, that can help and guide our operations. So these are things that you will be learning. Other features or characteristics that you might not think about, that are also important in considering when you're working, that I'm not going to get into. But for me, the pH and the soluble salts that come from food waste is something that I have to pay attention to for the end product. And a lot of contamination, they might come through larger operation. But when you have a mid-scale to small-scale operation, you can control for many of these contamination. And that's why I like the scale that I am. I can talk to people on a one-to-one basis, because I'm collecting through bikes, looking at their bins, and able to provide feedback. And it starts a conversation where we both learn about the contaminants and the potential impacts to the quality of our compost. And something that is key is that when you do this, you are basically engaging into understanding not only the decomposition process, but also the ecosystem of the compost, and the ecosystem of the compost when it interacts in the soil, and the interaction of microbes with the plants that are in the soil. And sometimes you can learn about compost in a very technical way, where things decompose, but you might not understand why actually you're doing. So if you want to troubleshoot, you need to go into a little bit of a technicality of what's going on when the temperature rises in your compost. What is a thermophilic phase? How do you control not going overboard? What happens if you go overboard, and what's the impact on the decomposition process? So these are things that are great to discuss and to learn, because what you're doing is you are facilitating a process. When you do composting, you create the condition for decomposition to happen. Decomposition will happen independently of you, but if you want to speed it up, and you want to make sure that things are of high quality and highly with high nutrient levels and good biology in it, then you have to understand what are those variables that you can manage to make that successful. And for us, and there's something that's emphasized in the course, is you have to monitor key parameters, whether you do temperature measurement, whether you're doing moisture assessment, whether you smell your compost, whether you're looking at bulk density, whether you go under the microscope and see if you have microbe of a different trophic levels in your compost, whether your compost is mature enough, whether we use looking at the microscope or other tests like the Solvita test that's helpful in many ways. So these are key. And in my case, I learned about, taking a compost sample and taking it to, a standard lab for analysis. And this is a physical chemical analysis of the compost, which I'm very happy to see. And sometimes it correlates to the microbial community that you have there. Sometimes it's not, because as you know, the biology of microbes in your compost, your soil might change over time depending on many conditions of, temperature, of moisture level, of interaction with plants, and so on. So again, this is one more tool that you have to be able to assess what you're doing and what you're doing right. According to the test, it's a very good compost according to standard. And the most important here are the bioassays, what the plants are telling you whether your compost is good enough, first to emerge as a plant, and second to be as strong and healthy as possible. And that's part of the work you want to do, is to create, again, the best amendment you can do through your compost to help out not only for plants, but also for soil restoration. Other things that I'm involved is in the community composting nationwide through the Institute of Local Self-Reliance, getting in there, part of your community, helping out, sharing your learning curve, sharing, what you have learned with others, learning from others, and I'm part of the steering committee that promotes these annual meetings of community compost. We talk about composting, we talk about tools and funding and policy making and troubleshooting and helping out everybody nationwide to replicate or adapt or to innovate around community composting. In community compost, you rely on many stakeholders you might find already in your community. People that generate food scraps, people that might be able to haul if you cannot haul. You have to engage with local solid waste planners that can help you also to plan routes or plan a place where to develop new sites. And officials that can help you with regulation, farmers that might be end users and residents, landscapers, community gardens, urban farms, compost users, equipment manufacturers. There are many, many resources within your community that are linked directly or indirectly to your purpose that you might find and help you to grow. And these are some of the guiding principles of community composting, which we adhere as part of our pledge from the things we do, where education and involvement of the community is very important. And this is just a showing of that pledge and principle that we follow through. I'm not going to go through it, but that's something you can find online if you want to learn more. And this is just an example of this is an old map of community composters at large in the United States. We are approaching 500 right now, and there's so many things that you can learn from them, and I encourage you to look into that. And the last thing that I've been really engaged that come truly directly from the Academy is to do some compost tea tests in farms. These are the 5 farms I'm working right now in Connecticut. This is just one of the experimental designs, which I discussed with Brian and others in the group, of how to organize a trial. How do you know that your extract or tea is making a difference? And sometimes it can be very anecdotal, but sometimes you need an experiment where you can be able to have a minimum of 4 blocks to be able to come out with some minimal statistical analysis to be able to say, yes, there's a significant difference between my control and my experimental sites. And that came from thinking in Costa Rica, what was my next step? And this is just one of the examples of the test. And that's taking me all over, from learning how to brew tea, to do microscopy, to use other tools like a microbiometer that helps you to tell the story and to see if things are going the same direction as you observe it. You have Mia from Yukon that got involved, that she's a mycologist and does some DNA analysis to see if there's who are the players here that might be having an impact in the yield and the control of pathogens and diseases that we might be observing. We're involving the community about how to set up a plot and how to market, so we can do our proper testing. Doing soil tests and doing paste analysis that I've never done before, and how to interpret those and how that helps you also in your operation. Understanding there's something I'm really having fun with is the dissolved oxygen levels, to know that your compost tea is not on the verge of getting into anaerobic conditions. And it's a helpful tool that has been very nice to have, and making sure that things are okay. pH, water quality, all this has come from this wonderful interaction from, again, integrating for your knowledge base, not knowing everything, and hoping to contribute with what you know to others and being open to learn from others. So I live it like this. This has been a wonderful trip with the community, and I really encourage you, if you're interested, to follow through, to get involved in this community, because you will learn a lot by doing.
All right. Thanks, Domingo.
Thank you, Domingo.
That was so good.
Domingo,
Always-
really quick, were you talking about Mia Maltz? Is that who you're working with?
Yes,
I
she's
love
Yeah,
her.
we know Mia.
yeah,
Yeah.
she's
The
I
community.
I muscled her down. No, she's relatively new to Yukon, and once I started to talk about composting and extra, I know this. I've been there. Who are you talking to? And say, no, I'm talking with Keisha. Oh, I know them. So she
Yeah.
moved away from California. Now I have the benefit from having her side and
Yeah.
trying to pick her brain to support our work and our research.
And now I've lost her, and she's on a different time zone, and she's very busy with all your research. Good work, Domingo.
Yeah, thank you.
Nicely done.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Oh, I
All right.
love seeing the community impact of that work. That's fantastic. There's so many cool types of composting that people deal with. Like, you think of like Brad dealing with a giant dairy farm and manure, and then Domingo, you guys delivering it, like picking up the waste, and Keisha and Casey doing it, this wonderful artisanal compost. There's so many different types of composters out there. It's just really fun.
We always wish we could take Jack's operation and Brad's operation and
Yeah.
put neighbors
Put
to
it
each
together.
other. Because
Yeah.
Jack has all the woody material and Brad has all the manure.
Manure mountains. Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Someday
right.
when we can teleport our students to the same location, it'll be
No doubt.
incredible.
Sweet.
It always reminds me of, I'm going to age myself, but the Reese's peanut butter cups always had those commercials back in the 80s where it was like, your peanut butter got my chocolate, your chocolate got my peanut butter. And there you go, Reese's peanut butter cups.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And then the Family Guy version of that.
Hey, well, before we get started, Melanie's
yeah.
asking, where can we access recordings of this and the other recordings we're doing? That's where do you put those
Oh
things?
yeah, absolutely. So right now we have a YouTube channel. We're posting all our public webinars at. We've got 3 up there now. We're probably going to post a lot more soon. And we
Really?
also have the Biological Primer, which is totally free. It's 12 lessons and webinars up there. Everyone has access to it. If you just sign up, put your email in at Compost Academy, and I'll post the link to both those in the chat.
Cool. Good.
Awesome.
I just gonna say, Domingo, I noticed the sugar baby little case study there, and that is what sold my dad on soil biology, is that he can grow sugar baby watermelons again. So I thought that was hilarious. He couldn't grow them for 10 years, and I said, well, Keisha and Casey knows, when they met him, he was like, oh, this is hogwash. Like, you guys are like insane. And then I was like, Dad, take a bag, follow the directions, put it on a thing that you can't grow anymore, last September he showed up with half of a 12-pound sugar baby watermelon with like a grin on his face, like he was like a child, and it was hilarious. So I like that you had that there.
And then you decided to give Chad the family farm, those
Yeah,
watermelons.
yeah. That was the test, right? I can grow my sugar babies, then it's all good.
Oh.
All right.
We got Q&A.
Q&A really all answered already?
Well, there's some people want to do live questions. Those are always fun. I see Kip and Aaron have their hand raised. So why
Cool,
don't we
yeah.
do Kip first, and then we'll get to the others. Hey, Kip, how you doing? Can you hear us all right? Let's see if we can hear you.
Well, actually, I do hear you just fine, but
Nice.
I didn't raise my hand, or maybe I did because I asked a question earlier. I was just kind of throwing it out there. We did 2 long windrows that went through. They went up to about 140 and stayed there for around 72 hours. We were right in there, 65, 72 hours, something like that when we turned them. And now they're resting at 125. I'm just kind of curious where we're going to end up. I mean, anytime we're under a thermophilic, we just kind of stay right there and let it rest, right? I mean,
Yeah, Casey had answered you in the questions there.
Okay, yeah, I'm
about, like,
sidetracked.
yeah, no,
Oh,
but
good.
I wanted to dig in more anyway because we actually like those kind of recipes where they're slower, lower, they're not getting so hot. This is something there's the industry standard. So if you're a compost producer and you're selling the compost, I know in California we have to make 5 turns if we want to sell it legally. But I find that the compost that isn't turned that much, that's at that slow, low recipe, it makes far better compost, microbially speaking, than when make a recipe where you're turning it 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times.
Yeah,
Now
I thought that might be the case.
there's the warning about the legalities, but your compost is probably going to be excellent. I would just keep it.
Yeah, I'm not much about asking permission, really. I mean, so far so good. So far so good. We're just gonna rock this thing and see what happens. You know, we haven't gone commercial yet, and I'm still trying to, or we haven't gone public yet. We're just kind of underground right now.
Nice.
We're just gonna kind of roll with it, see what happens.
Yeah.
That's it.
I was gonna say when we first got started, we used to try and just like get our pile up to 160 degrees as fast as possible so that we could turn it right away. And we'd want it to like 160, 160, 155, 155, 140, and then drop. But now what we do actually, like Keisha was saying, it's just so much. We're seeing such a better diversity of microbes and just healthier looking compost if we can keep it at that like 140 or 140, just above 131 really, and try to keep it below 150 and stay in that longer turning period window. We still get through 5 turns, but it takes a bit longer, but you just don't get those crazy hot temperatures, which I think even though, beneficials can handle some of that high heat, just getting up to those crazy, crazy high temperatures is absolutely not necessary.
Yeah, I'm glad we didn't have to go 5 because it just did that, and we were just kind of lucky. Our materials are really hard to gauge. I mean, most probably are. Our wood chip guys are doing a lot of green. That's a ramial. It comes in hot enough to just go ahead and compost a lot of times. It's like, well, but I want to get diversity. I need a little manure, a little grass. So we're early. We're babies. We're looking forward to all this fun.
Awesome, Kip. Well, it's good you're here today. I'm just glad you're already up at scale. That's great. You're speaking our language.
Yeah. I need to get my schooling finished. I'm slacking. I'm just right at that right at my MPA 3, and it's been stumping me for a while. So gotta get over it. Get through it.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Kip.
Yep. Thank you.
We had another question from Brian, and it was, what different types of composting do we go over, and does that include ASP? Domingo brought up that's how he composts his waste. And we go over a lot of different types of composting. Thermophilic is our specialty. That's what we know the most about. But none of us are afraid of saying when we don't know what we're talking about, and we have a great community we can reach out to. So I like to talk a lot about vermicomposting. Brian does that at home often, so he's got quite a bit to say. We have a few students that are involved in larger scale vermicompost, and they're actually on the cusp of getting into something bigger. And of course, they'll be sharing. I do a lot of like semi-static piles, and I've been playing around with food waste a lot, but everyone in the class is going about it in a different way. And we don't have specific requirements for what kind of compost you're producing. Some people just don't have the capacity, space, or ability with their body to make thermophilic compost. It's a it's difficult to make. It's a lot of energy that goes into it. So we have some students that don't make compost at all. For them, their mission is to learn about composting, be able to speak about this, as if they know something, and so they can promote the young people in their community. So their goal is different than others. Some people like Domingo already has a business that he just, he wanted to further dive into how to make what he's already doing more effective. And then we have people that, gosh, was it Cheryl? Someone's got a worm bin in her kitchen that she keeps and uses that to make compost extracts and teas. So we are all over the place as a group, and we get into whatever kind of composting you want to talk about. And like people come up with, there's so much you can do. I had no idea till we started the school. People will bring up like, because there's so many I can't even remember the names of right now, and I have to just look it up and research. And I think the neat thing about what we teach is we're letting you know how microbes, like what they need to grow. So they're more, instead of being like, this is exactly how you do worm composting, or this is what you have to do for your static compost pile to be effective, or for your Johnson Sioux to win. It's a lot of different, I'm losing the word for it, but like we're looking at moisture, we're looking at structure, we're looking at input materials, we're looking at holistic systems. So no matter what kind of compost you're making, you're going to automatically be like, oh yeah, like I could probably apply this to what I'm doing. So instead of telling you specifically what to do, we're trying to open it up for you to work it out on your own, which is a little bit what Elaine did for me in the beginning. But we've also got all those big fails that we can share with you along the way. So like, ooh, you might not want to try it that way. That could be expensive.
And we like, when you're going through the process too, part of what we're trying to do is that if you're going to do something like a area static pile or something that's different from what we had our course curriculum, is to actually post it and go through the journey, and so that us as well as the students can comment on that and kind of help you figure things out along the way, which is really important as you're going through that process, to have somebody to say, well, what about this? What about that? And kind of check you through that process. It really does help.
Yeah, and he had another question too, or just a clarification about vermicomposting or further post-thermophilic biological enhancement. Yeah, we do talk about vermicomposting. And if you're wanting to go to scale, we'll probably bring in the big gun, someone else for that. That's something we do often, is bring in different experts to do side talks. So we have our weekly talk, but often we'll have two things going on in one week or maybe even more. But yeah, post thermophilic, like improving your compost piles. Yeah, we get into that. We talk about it. We talk about how to culture mycorrhizal fungi in your compost once it's went through thermophilic. We talk about what if you want to use a lower quality compost, large scale compost that's maybe not so good. What can you do to make that an ecosystem? That's an entire class. That's a whole project for one week. So we try to get into everything we can. We're organized, and then we're all over the place. Whatever the community's into, we're
Organized
doing.
chaos.
Organized chaos. That's right.
And there's one other thing I just wanted to mention, and Kishi, I know you hit on this, which is, compost is the foundational tool that we use, especially when we're talking about, inoculating soils with microbes and so forth. But in this space, composting is part of it. Then there is the liquid amendment application kind of space that's in there. There's the testing space. There is a lot of different avenues that people will push themselves into to do this kind of work. And to be honest with you, we need all of that. There's a huge opportunity space as far as people doing regenerative agriculture and wanting to work with biology versus with the agrochemical kind of paradigm, and there are just so many different places that you can plug yourself into. So find what your passion is, and then see how you can take that knowledge you have around microbes and apply that into those different growing systems.
Yeah. All right, I just realized I was wondering why these questions were already answered. Chad already answered them, but I want to get into it
Good
more.
job, Chad.
Astrid's asking about human manure. So it says, we're always concerned about worm drench if using animal manure. For you guys, worm drench, in a worm composting system, if you want to find spirilla, spirochetes, some gnarly critters, worm leachate is a place where you can typically find those sort of organisms if you're looking. And that's right on point. The thermophilic part of the compost actually makes it a little bit less risky, right? So they're saying that the animal manure, human manure should surely have a higher risk of pharmaceuticals in it. Is dilution the solution? Is that the strategy? Or fungi, worms, combination of time, using only a non-food producing land? Yeah, so right now, I know in Canada, and Chad can speak more to this, and in the US too, a lot of our states do allow the use of, they're called biosolids, not human manure. Human manure is like the hippie term, we poop in a bucket and compost it over time. But biosolids are a thing in California where we live. We're not allowed to apply them on our agricultural crops. Really grateful for that because it's not just the drugs people are taking at the festival. Like honestly, like I'm not as concerned about someone eating mushrooms or LSD as I am like pouring their household chemicals of whatever down the toilet or you know, the things that people shove in toilets is just insane. This isn't like my specialty or line of work, but I've talked to people that run like porta potties before. You can't imagine what people put down the toilet, especially in a composting situation. So Chad's got a lot on his plate with this. But I think like what you said is dilution the solution. It might be, but I think the microorganisms are really the solution. Because even when we're working on breaking down the toxic waste in our cities, they use rotifers, they use bacteria, they employ them, they grow them. Um, and as we can create a really diverse ecosystem in our compost, it can handle toxins. And that's where the solution to pollution is dilution, that saying comes from. Back in the day, even 80 years ago, you could pour stuff on our soil and it would just be dealt with magically. And how did that happen? It was fungi, it was bacteria, and then all those other organisms eating them. So I'm assuming Chad's strategy is going to be to use microbes to break it down and then test it over time. What's your plan, Chad?
You're on mute.
He's not.
Yeah,
He got
I
it.
was on. Yeah, I talk to myself out loud sometimes, so I mute myself. Yeah. So the plan is to the festival also wants to start oyster logs. So in a couple of years, when we start these oyster logs, we'll chip them and we'll start using those inoculated chips to inoculate the piles. And we all, maybe not, we all know, but like mushrooms are a biological filter and they have the ability to break down carbon bonds and, clean up oil spills. So in theory, my plan is to do that and test vigorously and see where the data points go. Um, it will be taking a lot of water, and these piles will be in shade. I'm doing a 1 cubic meter pile this year to start collecting that data to really see. That means for right now, I have to buy a couple. Actually, I'm not going to buy them, but there's a mushroom grower in my local farmers market. He's more than gung ho to give me some spent blocks. We're going to throw that in there and we're just going to test. Like, we have to test for heavy metals and things anyway. But it'd be really interesting to see what the mushrooms do and the other beneficials do with those chemicals over time. I don't really see it more of as a dilution more than using nature to do what nature does. And
Yeah.
and mushrooms were before the planet was inhabitable. They were doing the job of making it habitable. So they still do that.
Yeah, I would also like remind everyone to it's not just, the oyster mushrooms are epic. Those have been studied extensively because they're really easy to grow. But Mia Maltz, who is the woman PhD that studies fungi that Domingo is talking about, a lot of her work dives into the undiscovered species of fungi that's growing in the soil already, which you might be cultivating in your compost. Um, DNA analysis, Chad brought it up early, is so expensive, to do a trial. Yeah, you're looking at like 15 grand just for that testing alone. And then what comes out of it is like, wow, like I know last time we got tested, it was like over 1,000 species of fungi, over 1,000 species of bacteria. And of those, there was this another huge block of the pie that they're just like, basically, we don't know what these organisms are at all. And so, in combination with the organisms you can buy from the store, mushrooms you can cultivate at home, and then the microbes that you can actually capture from the wild, you can't really imagine how quickly things could get cleaned up. It would be cool to do a trial, oyster mushrooms alone versus oyster mushrooms in your compost, or just your compost alone, to see which one is dealing. Because I know it's not, we found a bunch of rhizobium in our compost, which that's something a lot of people buy. They'll get a rhizobium, starter to roll their roots in. And we had like 3 or 4 species that are just wild in California growing on our compost. So the DNA analysis is going to be that next level, just to like really see what we're doing.
And it will get cheaper over time. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's heading that way.
Nice. So there's a few open questions here.
I've got two. The first two kind of go hand in hand together, actually.
You mean
One from
Astrid's and Brian's? Oh yeah, they totally go hand in hand.
She's like, how much, Astrid asks, how much effect can pesticides, herbicides, and herbicide residues on compost made with food and plant waste? How concerned should we be about composting waste? And the other one is, will you have a list of persistent herbicides, warmers, etc., to watch out for when inquiring to like get feedstocks for your compost? And yeah, so I like those two because they're both basically about what can be laden in the materials that you're picking up for your compost. And it is something to be concerned about, especially with like green materials and things like that in cities. They are often getting hit pretty heavily with numerous herbicides, pesticides, things like that. But it's also an issue with hay as well. We've had many compost piles go off where we're building a compost pile, we don't have enough of our own green material, and so we go out and we buy hay bales, and they look green. The guy at the counter says they're not organic, but they're grown organic. They're just not certified, and we use them in our compost piles, and our compost piles fail. They won't heat up. The grass doesn't break down. You can tell it's got some kind of preservative, actually, is probably what's on that. So yes, it is something you need to look out for. And as to the question about the like wormers and things like that, they're persistent, that are in the manures, we've had fairly good luck in terms of our manure sources. We do always ask whenever we go to another place and we're trying to build out a compost lot for someone else that isn't in our area. Yeah, you do have to do a little bit of research and find your manure resource, because some people are using a lot of dewormer and a lot of antibiotics and have a lot of animals coming into that zone where it's just kind of common practice when you get a new animal in to make sure that it's not going to make everybody else sick. But there has been cases for us, especially in Florida. We went to a farm and they were like, oh yeah, no, we definitely use wormer. We definitely use antibiotics. And we were like, well, shoot. And so what we did is went to the manure pile itself and actually saw where there was plants growing on the edges of that manure pile, or even in the manure pile, and just kind of pulled those out. Keisha took it back and put it under the microscope, and we saw tons of nematodes and things like that in that manure. And so we can kind of assume that wormer has lost its effectiveness, or actually become less effective in that pile.
And I'll add, Brian did ask, the question got put away, but will we have a list of persistent herbicides, wormers, and et cetera to watch out for when regarding livestock? I have a list of the chemicals that actually scare me. The herbicides, the wormers, those are huge lists. Like Casey said, we've had experience in those actually breaking down if you have a good base of microbes to start. But I have got a whole new list of things that freak me out when it comes to hay preservatives. And yes, there is a list. It's in our resources when you get there. And you can read all about the things we've been talking about with the problems with hay, which is actually not where you would think our biggest issues come from, but it is.
And Brenda posted a link to U.S. Composting Council that has a list of the persistent herbicides.
Nice. Very good, Brenda.
Yeah,
Brenda's
thanks,
got all the
Brenda.
good links.
Yeah, thanks, Brenda.
There's a question from Brian again. Will the microscope component be as in-depth as Matt Powers? Matt Powers' course is a microscope course. Ours is not. We will be developing a microscope course. We have, a different way of teaching, a different way of approaching than Matt Powers does. We are definitely aligned in our goals, but this is not our full-scale microscope course. What you're going to get is we get on together live. We look at microscope samples. We're always posting different organisms and trying to discover what they are and sharing new things about them. Yeah, our microscope course, I'm going to be bringing on, I'm working on it. Hopefully we'll do it this winter, maybe next spring, who knows? But I'm bringing in a whole bunch of teachers from all over the world that have been studying protozoa, fungi, nematodes, specifically with their entire lives. And so we're going to bring on new teachers. We're going to learn all kinds of new stuff, but that's going to be later. Microscope is just a small part of what we do in this class.
Yeah, so it's going to be more like bonus sessions. Like next week, we're doing a microscopy, webinar where we're bringing on samples, kind of doing what we did last week, and we're going to sprinkle that in through the 13-week program.
And we have in our learning circles where people post, different videos and pictures. Hey, what is this organism? And then, obviously we'll either try to help identify, or other people in the community will, give their voice to that as well.
Recently, we had one. I found a Spirilla in my compost. Should I panic?
Yeah.
There's a lot of discussion around, like when to freak out and sterilize the room. We get into all of that.
Cool. Well, here's one from Citros. Is it mandatory to compost under the shade? What's the side effects of composting under direct sunlight? I've been composting for 6 years now, but haven't noticed. Maybe they're minimal.
Dries your compost out faster. That's one thing you're going to hear a lot. I'll go ahead and get it out of the way. The most important part of composting is giving your compost water. Some of you might not even need to come to the academy now because that's the secret.
You gave it away, Keisha.
But yeah, the only thing with composting, the light can affect the microbes for sure. Even if you leave it out without a cover, it can kill a decent amount of microorganisms in the top and dry it out. But our windows are in full sun. A lot of our clients' windows are in full sun. If you've got a big compost lot, you don't have trees, so you're always in full sun. So you can make it happen.
Yeah, compost covers though. Getting some kind of covering will just help you mitigate moisture loss. That's the biggest thing, really.
But I think for everybody, for like Keisha, your mother pile, I know Todd's mother pile, like they kind of, well, for Todd's, who's keeping on the forest, I try to keep it really shaded. But for your mother pile, what are you trying to do to maintain the best?
My mother pile is a garden and it's in full sun.
Oh, okay.
The garden likes the sun. My whole thought is this, like I keep the plants on my mother pile because who works best with microbes? Plants do. How do they work with microbes? By taking the sun's energy and converting it into food resources. So I want my mother pile in full sun. I want my plants to be able to photosynthesize as hard as they want to. But you could keep it in the shade. You could keep it in the forest. That's the thing. There's not one way to do this. There's 1,000 ways to go about any little aspect of what we do. So yeah.
It's more about knowledge and understanding how those systems actually work. Because once you have that knowledge, then you can go ahead and try all different types of things. And then you have the ability to understand, oh, okay, that worked or that didn't work. And you really have kind of the true or base understanding behind that.
Nice. All right. Well, I think there's 2 more questions here, and I feel like that's a great endpoint for today's webinar. So Abdul is asking, working with agriculture or fruit, vegetable waste, how do you typically filter or approve inputs? And second, for garden trimmings and branches after shredding, do you consider them both brown or green, or do you have a general carbon and nitrogen ratio for that mix?
Domingo, do you want to answer that? You're the food waste guy.
Well, listen, the thing with the food is that it comes from many sources and it's very diverse. And depending on who you consult, they'll give you a different CN ratio. But normally is on the high nitrogen level. These are feedstocks that will rise your temperature very quickly. In a matter of 2 days, you're hitting 160 degrees, and you're fighting to put much more carbon to push more air into the chambers to be able to release the hot air in it. So that's an issue. But you also have some vegetables that are, doesn't have too much water content. They have more woody material that as they dry and they lose their nitrogen, they become more into a carbon-based material. And it's very hard, it's a type of feedstock that is changing a little bit over time. Sometimes very hard to process, so you prefer to dry them to be able to chop them, reduce the particle size to be able to treat them. And I was dealing with a lot of waste of peas coming from out the farm today, and these had so much green in it, there was no way to cut it down. So I prefer to dry them. So it's easier to chop them and incorporate them as a brown. So yes, understanding how your material might change over time based on the water content, based on the loss of nitrogen, it's very important to understand. One thing that happens, it's there are many publications out there that are paying, attention to CN ratios, and you have a lot of companies that now publishes their lab data about CN ratios or specific feedstock. But when it comes to food waste, it comes from many parts, so you have to pick up your own CN ratio to work with for your recipe development.
Answer.
Fantastic. All right, I guess
Thanks for
last
being here too, Abdullah. It's good to see you.
All right, I guess last question from Kip here. I've become less worried about using containers that have had harsh chemicals. I feel like a soaking of compost in the vessel will take care of what I can't remove with hydrogen peroxide. And I'm going to build resistance by having it present, if that's all right and makes sense. Thoughts? So I guess it's about using containers that had harsh chemicals.
I know exactly what you're talking about, Kip. This is like when this girl gets enough money to like have extras, that's what I'm moving into. That's where all my interests really lie right now, is in working with toxic materials. And yes, like you're picking it up right away. You're going to build a resistance, not just a resistance, like you're going to build resilient microorganisms that can resist that specific chemical. And it is my belief that that's really the next step of this, is going into places like dumps, like anywhere that's been just very toxified, figuring out what microorganisms are there, bringing in new microorganisms, creating these environments. And, the way that we work at Catalyst, we have, our mother pile that goes into everything that we build. And over time, we've been creating this diverse culture of microbes, and now it eats anything, really fast. But I think, like, if we were doing that more thoughtfully with really toxic materials, that's exactly what we would be doing. We would make a powerhouse of a mother pile that can just eat toxic crap. So it doesn't seem like there's anyone out there that just wants to give me a couple million. How much will it take to do that? But I think we just need to keep talking about it, because at some point there's got to be funding for solutions. Like right now, the funding just goes into how do we kill it? How do we cap it? How do we hide it? But really, like, how do we find something to eat it? That's really the question. We need to make these places ecosystems. So thanks for saying that. That's really, I hope to have more answers in the future that are less passionate and more specific. All right, is that all? I feel like that's
that's it, and that's all. But
all right.
that was a fantastic session today. And again, Domingo, thank you so much again. And Chad, thank you for sharing this with the world. Thank you, Keisha, Casey, Brian, and thank you for everybody who participated. Keep it watching your inbox. We'll send everybody the replay. And next week, we're going to have another microscopy session. If you want to dive in and explore the microbial world of the soil with us under a microscope, that should be a fun time. And so thanks for tuning in for another great Compost Academy webinar. And hopefully we'll see you guys next week, in 2 weeks, whenever you're free, and have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, Raleigh.
Yeah, thanks, Raleigh.